Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Welcome back to the Near Memo with David, Mike, and Greg, in which we talk about all things local, SEO, Google, etc., etc. And this is episode 153. After two really exciting episodes, we're settling back into our normal cadence. And if you haven't seen the John Jantsch episode, that's really worth watching. So today we are going to be talking about review phobia, Google's response to the DMA changes, investigation, cluster of issues that we've talked about in the last couple of weeks. And then we're also going to be talking about SGE and AI and whether Google puts all of AI behind a paywall, whether it launches on May 14, and we'll see what happens. So, Mike, why don't you lead us off with the review phobia issue?
Sure. So Miriam did a really nice article. Miriam Ellis did a nice article at Moz, How to Acknowledge and Cope with Fear of Local Business Reviews. And she validates, that three types of fear: that sometimes people are antisocial online and can act like jerks, and review platforms limit your ability to control what shows, and your livelihood's at stake. So people appropriately, or some people, fear that. I mean, the other thing I see in the Google forums where I deal with this a lot is not just fear, but loathing. And, Miriam makes some suggestions about how to cope with the fear by reframing each of these into a more productive sort of view of, creating a great business plan, reframing negative reviews as business intelligence, and, having the spam reporting guidelines at your fingertips. I would like to take it to the next step and say, reviews are kind of like taxes. You're not, and death. They're inevitable. And ultimately, you need to move to this totally dispassionate point where it's just a business process that flows independently of your emotional state as a business owner. And I understand the emotional state, but take somebody like Barbara Oliver. It took her 2 years of constant counseling to get over the fear and loathing and to move into this thing where it was viewed in somewhat the light that Miriam positions it. I think there are some things that a business could do beyond what Miriam suggests, and she obviously is aware of them, but article length limited her. One is, having a review program that gathers first-party review information. What we found with GatherUp was that you'd get 10x or 5x or 8x the number of feedbacks from first party, and people were freer to tell you what the problem was. And once they got that off their chest, the review ratings on Google didn't change. In other words, they told you, they got done with it, and there was no need for them to go out. So it was very valuable to put in place a process that sort of filtered them out. In fact, I'm seeing that currently with a couple of clients that I work with right now, and they're worried about them. But the reality has been that this feedback has come internally and has not gone out to Google. And that, to me, is a tremendous, if you can deal with the criticism and use it the way Miriam suggests, which is to improve your business, then capturing that complaint directly is a way of sort of turning it into a process. The other is to, she suggests that the TOS of each of these services so that you can, file against complaints. I would suggest that can be systemized a step further. You should probably file against every Google review that's negative, just as a matter of course, figuring that, realizing that Google's going to take down what they're going to take down, not take down what they're not going to take down, and understanding the TOS is almost a waste of your time because Google doesn't even follow the TOS. They have their own internal criteria, and you never know whether a review is going to match it or not. So you might as well just go make a system out of filing a request for takedown of every negative review. And
Flood the zone.
Comes down to, what's that?
Flood the zone.
Flood the zone. 70% of them, 60% of them, 50% of them, what difference does it make? Some will come down. So again, distance yourself from the negative review on Google and just deal with it as a process, as opposed to some sort of personal attack. And ultimately, you need to realize that negative reviews, to some extent, help your credibility. typically in a Google display, these negative reviews don't show very highly. We saw in our research that people are looking for recency of reviews. Often they'll even resort by recency. Relevance, which is the default view, doesn't highlight them unless they're a consistent problem. So, and we've seen that only 1 in 5 searchers actually read the reviews. Their ratings are important, but they don't read them. So if only 1 in 5 read them, and of those, most of them are just looking for recent reviews, then the likelihood of it being read is very small. And so don't worry, be happy, go smoke, go drink a couple beers with David and myself, and move on. I mean, you need to just turn it into a business process and not personalize it, I guess is where I'm at with this whole thing.
I want to come back to something you said, which I think is very important, and just poke it a little bit more. So the idea of soliciting reviews directly, not for the platforms, not for Yelp, not for Google, not for TripAdvisor, but directly from the direct customer feedback will potentially diffuse the frustration or whatever it is, and prevent them from going out and doing that venting publicly in a negative review.
It doesn't prevent them. It relieves the stress.
Or minimize
Right.
the likelihood that they're going to do that. So that is not. So I think that's a very smart strategy. A lot of people are probably, it's a simple thing, but a lot of people don't think about it probably. And then also review gating. So it's not review gating per se, but how would you respond to the claim that you're trying to siphon away the negative reviews?
Well, one is like a gather up. What we designed when Google changed their terms of service in 2018 was we designed a positive and negative screen, both of which gave people the opportunity to provide reviews publicly following the internal first party review. So they'd go from first party review to a screen. What we discovered, and on the negative screen, we sort of highlighted the internal complaint process, and on the positive screen, we highlighted the reviews, but not to any great extent. But what we discovered was that happy people went out and left reviews, and unhappy people didn't. So it was more of a self gating, a psychological gate, where they got it off their chest. They didn't want to publicly complain. And what we saw in a case where I studied, 10,000 reviews in one business, a very almost insignificant, like statistically insignificant change in review rating, but a significant increase in the number of reviews because people felt like you were no longer deceiving them. So we saw volumes go up, ratings drop imperceptibly small amount, and complaints come internally. And that's the ideal situation. So where the restraint isn't a gating, it's the person self-imposes based on social norms. Right.
Well, and psychologically, I mean, people just want to be heard very often. They want their grievance to be recognized and potentially addressed.
But it requires overcoming fear, because even in businesses where this is happening, I have to go back and remind them 99% of these people are not leaving negative reviews online for you.
Yeah.
So even if it's painful to see that you're occasionally failing, it's not hurting you. In fact, it's helping you. So I have to continually remind the people who we've done this with still. And it's just, it's an education process. You have to get through fear, through loathing, onto this sort of mechanical business process response where you've unpersonalized it and you're taking it for what it really is, which is they're having a bad day. You had your employee had a bad day, whatever. Maybe it's a bad process, in which case you have to fix it. But
I love one of your original local U edicts of there's two kinds of businesses in the world: the ones that have gotten bad reviews and the ones that are going to get a bad review.
Right.
And so it just happens. I mean, it just like you're going to get bad reviews, and what's much more important is to you're actively suppressing, but driving down the likelihood that bad review is going to get seen by actually getting a more representative sample of how your customers feel about you. So
and
I love the notion of making this a process, like you said.
Right. So. And understanding that if it does get out there, it's probably still not going to get seen, assuming you're doing your other job.
Well, and it's important. It's important for a few bad reviews or a few critical reviews to exist, because a straight up 5.0 profile raises this sort of specter of fraud or review manipulation. And creates skepticism on the part of the consumer. I
Right,
mean, that's something that
exactly.
Yelp used to say all the time, and it was like, yeah. But it's really true. It's really true. If you only have 5-star reviews, people are going to be skeptical about it.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So, are you?
I just want great article by Miriam, and kudos.
Yeah,
to her.
it was a terrific article. It was a terrific article.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.